me pause this. Okay. I'm going to start recording. All right. Okay. So one of the first things I want to do is we'll do introductions, and I'll start with me. And then Claire, you can go, and then we can go around the horn, because I think this is everyone's first class, right? So no one well, you guys know each other from last year, right? I see a lot of heads nodding. Okay. Claire, you can't see the heads nodding, but they are nodding, right? Okay. My name is David Mackay. Now, does everyone have a link to the syllabus, or you do have a link to the syllabus? Good. So I'm really thrilled to be teaching this class, because I used to teach a data journalism class to fourth-year students and master's students. And I did that for a number of years. And I was asked to create the course because when we take a look at data, it is everywhere. We are awash in data, and it is now so easy to essentially download a little data set, filter, sort, get it into a data wrap or something like that, and do a little story. And increasingly, organizations like mine, Canada's National Observer, you not only have to write your story, but you're responsible for your own visualization and getting everything into the CMS. So everything, the content management system. So everything that you're doing now is preparing you for what you will end up doing, because chances are that your media will be behind a paywall, and people will pay for your product because you were offering something original. Okay, so that's our starting point. I used to be at the CBC for 26 years. I left to strike out on my own. I teach in the master's program here, so I teach all the master's students with Jim Brownskill. That's in the winter. And we teach them the same kind of data skills that I'm going to be teaching you. And, you know, we will only be doing data inclusively for about 4 weeks, but hopefully I can get you up and running. Okay. At the Canada's National Observer, I'm the deputy managing editor, and I'm also a data journalism trainer. And I have, over the course of my career, and I still continue to do it, use data to tell really important stories. Everything from the use of dangerous drugs, to the RCMP's use of tasers, to dangerous medical devices, to violence in nursing homes, to, I could go on and on, okay? So I teach this class because I really believe in data, and I believe that it will help you get ready for the job market. So I'm thrilled, absolutely thrilled to be teaching this, and we're going to have a lot of fun together. And I don't want it to be intimidating. It's actually easier than you think, right? I mean, by the end of this class, you'll essentially be up and running. Okay. So that's my story. Claire, do you wanna hop in?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm Claire. I'm a master's student. I'm in my second and perhaps final semester, or somewhere in there. Yeah, I took David's investigative course last year, which was wonderful. I had a great time, so I'm really pumped to be back working with David again. And I'm really eager to meet all of you in person next week. I have done a little bit of work sort of here and there. I was managing editor at a very tiny magazine in Toronto for a little while. I've done copy editing for the Globe and Mail and pagination for the Globe as well, and a bunch of other sort of small things. But I'm really excited to be back at Carleton this semester.
Good. Okay. So why don't we start here, and we'll go just around the room. Okay. Go ahead. And just make sure that you turn you unmute yourself so that, yeah.
Let's hope this does. Okay, cool. Yeah, I was waiting for the echo. Yeah, so my name is Gabby. I'm in third year here. Do we talk about like work or anything? Yeah, so I was a wire reporter at the Canadian Press Ontario desk for a bit. And now I'm a labor reporter for a publication called Rabble, not Rebel. there's an important difference.
And what's the difference for people who don't?
Rebel, I think the most recent thing I heard about them was they were kicked out of a question period for an election debate. They're not really known for their journalistic standards. So yeah, I just want to make that difference, I guess.
Ideologically, they're on opposite ends.
Yeah. Oh yes, that as well. That as well. Very, very different.
The rebel
Yeah.
it's pretty right wing, and the rabble actually is left wing.
Yeah.
So people on the right wing would look at the rabble and say, "Wow."
Yeah, they wouldn't like us.
Disdainful of the rabble, as the rabble folks would be disdainful of the rebel.
Yeah.
You know, but I like that example because I think it's indicative of the kinds of jobs that you are going to be, you know, hopefully getting.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay, good.
Next.
Hi, my name is Camille, and I have yet to have any credits to my name.
Okay. Have you ever worked with data before? Or?
No, not in that sense.
Okay. All right. So you'll be our benchmark.
Right? Like if Camille gets all of this stuff, then I know that I've knocked it out of the park, right? Okay. All right. All right. Next. Just make sure you unmute yourself. Oh, you're. Yeah, just but yeah, make sure that you log in, please. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Kyle, I'm a fourth year student, minoring in human rights, and I think I've written for the Charlatan before. I also wrote for Capital Current last year. Interested in writing about like arts, culture, music, fashion, all that kind of stuff, the environment, yeah.
So help me understand. You're in fourth year.
Yes. I'm just retaking this course.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
And before I forget, what I'd like to do is, someone, you have an extra sheet of paper? Can you rip it out and you can start on either end here and just, I need your name. I would like your Gmail account and your phone number. Your Gmail account, because, I'll probably sign you up for some kind of cool tools. And it's just better to use your Gmail account because you'll have it forever.
Okay.
So yeah, why don't we start? Yeah, you can start, and then we can
on email, and then we'll just go around the horn, right? And that way I can take attendance. Yes, please. Yes. Okay. Thanks, Kyle. Okay, thanks. Next.
Hi, I'm Marissa. I'm also a fourth year student. I took like kind of a semester off last semester, so I'm catching up on a few third year courses. I work in comms for the government of Canada, which is not super fun, but it kind of sometimes I work with data. I work at OSFI, the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions. Not, but yeah, it's nice to say that. Yeah, it is. There is interesting things that happen sometimes. Yeah, and I really like to travel. So that's probably my main priority. Hopefully I'll write some things in there and make some money doing that.
Is that a full-time job for you?
Yeah, I got OSFI. I'm a server at a golf course. So I do that in the night, but
So you
travel and then
are
leave.
this part-time then?
No, I'm full-time in school. Yeah.
Full-time.
Yeah. It's fun life. But then I like leave for 6 months and travel. So it works well.
Okay.
And you're still doing
Stockpile
prep.
money and then leave. Yeah.
Good.
It works.
Okay.
Next.
Hi, my name is Jenna. I'm also a student. My so I'm taking it this year, one other third year class. I have written, I think, like a couple of articles for the Charlatan. And I'm really into like travel, like writing and like magazine writing as well. And it's kind of more like I kind of want to do that. I also really want to like travel afterwards. And yeah.
Next.
I'm Jessica, and I'm not in fourth year, I'm in third year. And this summer I wrote a few articles for the local newspaper, a really small one. It's called Beach Metro. It's in Toronto.
Is it online?
Both physical and online. My dad works there, so that's why I had some stories. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Nothing really else exciting.
Behind you. Are you logged on to Zoom, Zach?
I'm trying now, like I have to draw the Wi-Fi and go like that. I'm getting on.
Okay, Zach, we recognize each other. Yes, okay, so tell us a little bit. Why don't you speak into that computer there so we can actually hear you in front of you? Just move up and speak in, yeah, so we can actually, no, so this recording can pick it up.
Thank you, bro. And the only journalism gig I've had was just writing for
Just introduce yourself and.
Zach from Ottawa. And the only journalism gig I've had is writing for some local paper in my neighborhood, the Main Streeter. Yeah.
To declare it's not really a conflict of interest, but I know Zach's mom very well. I wrote about her, and I know all about Zach and all about her family. And she's an amazing person, and it's good to see Zach here.
Good to see you too. Yeah.
Okay. Next.
I'm Jaden. I have a bit of writing experience. I was the sports editor for the Charlatan last year. I've wrote like a couple of news pieces, but I mostly write about sports. I wrote for Canada Soccer over the summer, covering the Women's World Cup. And now I'm kind of just doing some freelance, and working at the Faculty of Public Affairs part-time in a comms position.
Sports is interesting because sports is all about data, right? Batting averages, save percentage, yards per carry. I mean, you name it, right? So it's all about it, you know, and yeah, and there's all kinds of stories behind those numbers, right? So yeah, okay. Yeah, next.
Hi, my name is Rebecca. I'm also in my third year. I've also only written for the Charlatan, and right now I work for CUSA doing like event audio and tech setup.
Okay. What kind of stuff do you write for the Charlatan?
I wrote for arts and culture just a little bit.
Okay.
Have you ever used any data
In any of the stories that you've written?
I think a little bit, but not to any great extent.
Okay. Yeah, next. Just unmute yourself, please. Thanks.
There we go. I'm Olivia. I'm in third year. I have a few clippings to my name. I've written a bit for the Charlatan, and then I also did some writing in high school, which I look back on now, and it's very embarrassing to read where I started, but it's kind of good to have that benchmark, I think. I have a minor in political science, so I enjoy sort of looking at everything through that lens, not necessarily totally focused on politics, but I think it provides a good perspective, like in the field doing reporting. I've done in terms of like sort of data and research, just the kind of big feature we did in second year. Mine was pretty like database, and I talked to some experts, which was really cool. So I think that going forward, I like to tie that in, and I think as a journalist, like it's our job to sort of break it down for the public. So I'm excited for this class. Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure. Okay, hi, my name is Bianca. I'm also in third year. For experience, I would say just like the Charlatan, I've written in like the arts and culture section and the news section mostly. I really enjoy like writing about music and fashion, and I got to cover a couple of like festivals this year. Fashion, yeah. And also like festivals. I got to cover like Jazz Fest and Blues Fest with the Charlatan, which was a lot of fun. Yeah, I am excited to learn more in this program. I don't really know exactly what I want to write about, but I like so far like the arts and culture and the news segments that I've written.
Fashion, wow.
Yeah, like
A bigger business, of course.
that is true. Yeah.
Big money.
Yeah.
A lot of data. A lot of data behind that, for sure. Next.
Hi, my name is Catherine. I don't have too much experience, just a couple of stuff that I did in high school, but I'm excited to get more into that this year. And I don't really have like a specific amount of stuff that I want to write about, just like a wide variety. I'm kind of open to everything. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Max. I'm a third year student, journalism and media communications. In terms of experience, I wrote a bit for the Charlatan in the sports section. And then this summer I had the opportunity to have a 2-week internship with the Hockey News. And I actually used quite a bit of data because obviously statistics and stuff. So fact checking, which yeah, included a lot of statistics. So and then I got a piece published by them eventually at the end. So it was a full circle moment actually, because actually I've been subscribed to their magazine since like grade 7. So like over the years I've just had a lot of issues from them. So yeah.
Okay. Next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Julian. I'm also in 3rd year, and I have no prior experience, but I've been hyped for 3rd year for a while because we get to do broadcast this year. And so, like, editing sound, radio, I love that. That's what I'm really here for. So I'm excited for this year.
Yeah, I mean, really storytelling is about multimedia, right? It's about words, it's about pictures, it's about sound, it's about graphics. So hopefully that's what we will be striving.
Like your stories will have all of those, or as many of those elements as possible. And last but certainly not least.
Hi, my name is also Kyle. I'm a 3rd year student. I have also no prior experience. I'm not 100% sure what I want to write about, but I would like to get into like documentary filmmaking eventually. So yeah.
Okay, great.
All right, well, let's get going. So I'm going to share my screen. And now we can, so this is our, whoops. So this is our syllabus. This will also be on D2L, but it's just a lot easier for me to work from my own WordPress site. So I will do so. All right. Let's just run through the syllabus, run through the course, and then please stop me if you have any questions. And this is my first time teaching, and this is my first section. So this is a learning curve for me as well. There'll be a few assignments. One is the visualized data and the data story together are 45%. So that story will be due in 4 weeks. So essentially it will be a story that will be data driven, meaning that the story emanates from the actual numbers or number in the story. And then there will be a visualization. So whatever trend that you're visualizing will be done in data wrapper, and that will be marked separately. Okay, so the story will be 30% and the visualized data will be 15%. There'll be 2 separate marks. Okay, there'll be a photo essay. David Kawai will be more involved in that, so he will be basically doing the lion's share of the teaching for the last 2 weeks of the 6 weeks that we have together. So once I find out from him what he wants to do, then that will be reflected on the syllabus. Okay, but we don't really have to worry about that for the next few weeks. There will be quizzes. So what do I mean by quizzes? Well, every class, for the first 4 classes, we are going to learn a technical element that I'm going to walk you through. And then your job will be to master that, and then I will test you on it the next week. And the reason that I do that, well, why do I do that? Am I just trying to be mean, or why am I testing you on stuff that I've showed you the week before? Absolutely, right. Because if you don't get it, then it either means that you didn't do it, the work, or it means that I haven't done a good enough job. So it's kind of a check for both of us, just to make sure that we're all on the right track. Okay, because there are certain learning outcomes that I'd like you to have after the 6 weeks together, and that is to be very comfortable with data, downloading a data set and getting a story from it. That's essentially, and then being able to work with photographs. Okay, and there will also be kind of small assignments, right? So the small assignments could be, okay, so last week, so let's project ahead to next week. We'll say last week I showed you how to download the Statistics Canada's inflation numbers and compare the inflation rates for food in Ontario. Repeat that exercise. Right? So if you've logged on and reviewed that section and then done it, you can knock the assignment out of the park. So I'm just going to ask you to repeat what we did the previous week. So that's what I mean by these small assignments. And if you get those, it's quite frankly the easiest 10% you'll ever get, right? And if you don't get it, well, it's again, same thing. It's, you know, either I'm not doing something right or you're not doing your work. Okay. And then professionalism. So if, for example, you get 10% on your quizzes and 10% on your small assignments, you're keeping up with the work. So it's pretty hard not to give you a 10% for your professionalism. Okay. So, you know, a good portion of the mark, a third of the mark is really up to you. Just show up on time, show up, do the work, right? And then the actual assignment, I can talk a little bit about that, but you know, as long as you work hard on it and work in groups, you should have no problem with this course. That's the bottom line. No problem whatsoever. The way we're going to do the assignments is how many are in this class? Someone do the math for me. How many are in this class? How many? 16? Are you sure about that? 15, 16, which is it? How many? 15? Okay, so odd number. So maybe one group might have 3 people. All right, so we'll have groups of 2 and one group of 3, and you'll have to come up with an idea. So each person in the group come up with an idea. You send them to myself and Claire, and essentially, you know, we're not there to micromanage, but we're just there to make sure that you're on the right track. My suggestion will be that you use the data sets that we have used in class. But if there are other data sets that you come across, like at least 2 people have talked about sports, one person's talked about fashion. If you come across other data sets that you'd like to use, feel free to run them by us. And the criterion that we'll be using to give you a yay or nay is it doable, right? So if it's predicated on you getting an interview with Canada's top fashion designer, or, you know, the coach of the Ottawa Senators, or the Ottawa Red Blacks, unless you have an in, maybe you do, I don't know. Likely that's maybe too heavy a lift for you. And we would say, why don't you just scale back your ambitions a bit, okay? But that's the criteria that we're basically looking at. So that's how it's going to unfold. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, let's go down to week 1. And so what I will do is all of this will be, this syllabus is also on D2L, but like I said, I'll be working, it's just easier for me to work from my site. I can upload stuff really quickly, but all of this will be on D2L. The way the recordings will work is that you will get a YouTube notice. Okay, so I keep all the I'll keep all the classes on my YouTube channel. You'll get a notice from YouTube, right? So I will share the link with you using your Carleton address. So only you will see the links. Right? And again, they're really instructive because you can use them as instructional videos. All right. So what are we gonna learn this week? Well, we've done our introductions, our course overview. So a general discussion about data and how data is used in stories. How is data used in stories? Okay, let me stop sharing here. And can I ask you, if you speak, can you make yourself appear in the camera so Claire can see you? Okay, so go ahead.
Sorry, my To support facts and points in stories.
Pardon me?
To support facts and points in stories.
Okay, only to support? Only to support a fact or a point?
Strengthen, to make a point.
Okay. Can you think of a story that has been driven, a big story lately that has been driven by data?
Any political story in the news normally has data in it, talking about voting.
Absolutely. What is one of the biggest political stories in Ontario right now? Huge.
The Greenbelt.
The Greenbelt.
Is there data? You betcha. Billions of dollars, right? A certain number of developers, right? Number of acres, number of parcels of land set aside, number of municipalities that may or may not have been consulted, right? That's all data. It's all data driven. But what is the story? Is the story about the data or the people behind the data? I think it's a bit of both, right? It's about okay, how many there are a certain number of developers that stand to benefit, right? So they are one of a number. So media outlets have done stories about those developers. Who are they? What kind of influence do they give? Do they give money? Do they make political donations to Doug Ford? Did they make political donations to Doug Ford during his leadership campaign? Did they make political donations to the progressive conservatives in previous elections? Now, is it illegal to make a political donation? Is there anything wrong with that? I see a lot of people shaking their heads no. No, there isn't. It's legal. Why is it legal? Because we can see who made a political donation. We can go to the Elections Ontario website, right? And with a little bit of downloading and using the search engine, you can see who made a political donation. It's a transparent system. So why is it a big deal so what if a developer made a political donation to the progressive conservatives and just happened to be one of the developers potentially benefiting from this? What's the big deal? I'm being deliberately provocative here, so I expect pushback. What's the big deal? Just your camera? So Claire can see you?
I think there are ethical violations when it comes to making political donations and then receiving certain political favors that goes against let's say like well-advised policies.
It's interesting that you use the term ethics, because what commissioner came out against this practice and whose report basically led to Clark's resignation on Monday? What commissioner? The ethics commission. Okay, so ethics, you're absolutely right. Okay, so in many ways that is a data-driven story. So the way you could do the story is, how would you localize that story? We have a green belt here, right? So how might you localize it if you're doing something for the current?
Talk to people or environmental groups in the areas that are being affected by the development.
Yeah, okay. Right.
What else? Talk to people who are being affected, but what kind of development?
Like the development in the greenbelts, like the areas that are going to be developed.
So the question might be, well, we've got a green belt here.
Is there development in the green belt? And if so, what? And what are the plans for our green belt? We don't really think about it too much because it's there, it's not controversial, but we're talking about green belt, and would we need to dip into the green belt to get more affordable housing? So what's another data point regarding this story? I just mentioned it. Yes, housing shortage. Okay, huge data point, right? And then, so you could look at maybe you could pivot to, well, what is the housing situation here? What are the wait lists? And then you think, okay, so what kind of housing are we talking about? Who would be keeping those wait lists? Right, so that's basically data, but then you drill down. Are we talking about low income? Are we talking about high income? Are we talking about first home buyers? So you see what we're doing, right? We've got a data point here, and then we're drilling down into the data to find stories. And that's what it's all about. But at the end of the day, we got to tell stories about real people. So the story could be about an increasing number of students who can't find homes. And what you would visualize would be to track the vacancy rates for students over the course of a number of years. And that would be a perfect assignment that you could knock out of the park in a few weeks. A couple of interviews, some data points, you're good to go. Okay? Yeah.
Just for like, in terms of the content, how would you define
A data point, just a number. Data is, we're just talking about numbers basically, right? The number of developers who stand to benefit from the development of the green space, of the green belt in the greater Toronto area. The number of people who are waiting to get into affordable homes. The number of homes or affordable homes that the province is promising to build by a certain year. Just numbers. Okay? So you have a general number, but the deeper, so you have like the number of how many people are on a waiting list, right? And then as you drill down to those, it's like, okay, but what type of people are we talking about? Are we talking about low income? Are we talking about students? Are we talking about first home buyers? So you drill down into those individual subsets of data, and then you drill down even further. So if we're talking about students, and we're talking about students in Ottawa, at Carleton, at University of Ottawa, so you drill down even more. Or Algonquin College, so you drill down even more, right? And then you say, okay, well, I've drilled down far enough. Now I'm going to find a student. I'm going to get statistics on the number of students who are waiting for affordable housing, and then you're good to go. Right, so that's how it works. Right, you start with a big number, and you drill down for littler numbers that can get you closer to a story. Okay, and so a really ideal data set is one that allows you to do that from the get-go. Right, and that's how we're going to. That's what we're going to learn how to do. Is to find those data sets, is to sort and to filter, and then to drill down as far as we can. Okay. Okay, let me share my screen again. All right, so here's a story that I uploaded to the syllabus this morning, and it's in the Globe and Mail. Because the Globe and Mail is behind a firewall, you might not be able to log on. So if you can't, I've uploaded it as a PDF. So I want you to read the story. Okay. Take a few minutes. And there's also a chart in here as well. Right? So this could be the kind of story that you write. It's based on numbers, and it's got a little visualization in the middle right there. Okay. And it comes in at about maybe 500-600 words. So have a read, and we'll talk about it. I'll give you a few minutes, 5 minutes. Is everybody on the story? Have you? Are you on the syllabus? It's on the syllabus, yes. So I'm on the syllabus right here. Okay. I should have said that, right? It's week 1. So scroll down to week 1. And then it's under links. I should have been more specific. Sorry about that. No, just go to you can go to Brightspace. I haven't put this one on Brightspace because I just uploaded it this morning. Yeah. So that's why I say work off the WordPress site because it's more nimble. And what I do is I update on Brightspace afterwards. So go to the syllabus on my WordPress site and then go down to week 1. Okay, let me put it in the chat. This is another reason why I really like being on Zoom, even though we're in person, because it allows us to share things really easily. Okay. So you should be able to log on now. So general rule, if I'm doing anything where you're not following me, just interrupt me and just let me know. Okay. So this is the story here. So everyone's got the story now? Zach, are you logged on yet? Yeah. Okay. One of the things that I do, and I think it's a really good habit, is when I actually read newspapers, still read newspapers, physical copies, with a pen, and I circle things. So as we're reading things in class, what I'd like to see all of you doing is having a notebook and taking notes, right? It's just a really, really good habit to get into. So that you're using a newspaper, a media report as a tip sheet. So one of the questions I would ask is, well, who has produced this report? Another question I would ask is, give me two of the most interesting numbers. Another question I might ask is, who is being quoted? And maybe even want to look that person up to see if he or she or they have a Twitter handle. And what have they tweeted this out? What are they saying about the issue? Are they an expert? Are they an expert? Is this person an expert who you might be able to use for your story? Okay. So as you go through copy like that, make notes like this, because it just helps you be more studious consumers of news. Okay, who produced the report? Okay. To tell you the truth, before I read this story, I'd never heard of them. So one of the first things that I do is I'd look them up. I would find out what their presence is in social media. I would follow them. I would see what else they're tweeting about, what else they're posting. Could be what other surveys they've done. Okay, so that's a good tip. Okay, and what kind of organization is it? Okay, why is that important to know? It's a charitable organization. I'll show you. So the Canada Revenue Agency, if you're a charitable organization, the Canada, you have to register with the Canada Revenue Agency. Why would that be? Zach? Yeah, because if you donate to a charity, you get a tax receipt, right? So they're collecting money. So the government has to make sure that they're legit, that they're not taking your money and frittering it away. So that means that if I'm a charity, I have to report my earnings and my books to the Canada Revenue Agency. So if I plug in into the search engine, the Mental Health Research Canada, and I search, here it is. Okay, so I can click on and look at all this. This is a data point. This is data. So just that clue that, oh yeah, it's a registered charity allows me to do this. Right, that's why it's important to take notes. And then, I'm not going to go into this, but these are all of their financial statements that have been filed, with 2022 being the most recent, right? And then if you scroll down here, you can see the basic information sheet, right, about it. You can see the directors, the programs, right? It describes itself as an innovative national charitable organization that is dedicated to improving the lives of Canadians by advancing mental health knowledge. Okay, new programs, and then if we scroll down to detailed financial information, we can actually see how much cash it has in hand, all of its financial information. Yes, it is. Yeah.
So they have to
every year. Yeah. Yeah. So this information is on an open data website, right? That's why we're going to spend a lot of time talking about open data, which we'll pivot to after the break. But you can see, look at all this information right here. It's just okay, and it's just kind of pointing and clicking. Okay, so you could do this if you were writing about anything, like a sports charity, or a fashion charity, or a charity that caters to students. If it's a charitable organization, you can do a search for it and look at its financial books and see and go from there. Okay, so that's an important piece of information. Okay, so it's the Mental Health Research Canada, a charitable organization. Okay, what's another important number? Okay, so the poll found that 51% of Canadians said inflation was having a negative impact on their mental health. Okay, so 51% of Canadians, right? So that's a top number, right? So 51% of Canadians, like, what does that mean? So then your question would be, okay, so is there a breakdown of that, right? And they have kind of broken it down. Now, there are a lot of numbers. There are too many numbers in this story, right? So how might you take this and then convert this into a story that you could do for, say, your assignment? There's an important demographic that's mentioned towards the end of the story. "32% of Canadians are expressing financial troubles, are reporting high levels of anxiety. That is the highest level among any group tracked by the poll, which also includes unemployed people, students." There you have it. We've drilled down, and we've drilled down to students. You're off to the races. Okay? And that's how data works, right? There were enough numbers in this story, and we used it as a tip sheet. It's not really much of a story. Right? A story would be a profile of a student who is suffering from these things. That would be a story. And then the chart, and I like the chart, and then you could use the chart to do the heavy lifting. And the chart could be an illustration of the numbers, which it is basically done, right? So it's got a title, and then it's in descending order, and it's got the different categories with the percentages at the end, right? So this is the kind of chart that you could do in really easily in Data Wrapper, really easily. It'd take you basically 5 minutes to do a Data Wrapper, right? And you would basically have, this would be a couple of columns in an Excel file. You copy and paste, you put a nice title on it, they cite the source, and you're off to the races. And you get the embed code, you upload it to your cloud account, right? You get the embed code, put it into the content management system, and you've got a nice story, nice big picture of your student, and you're off to the races. Okay? Great assignment. Now, how would you find the student? Well, you guys are masters at that, right? There's social media. There's all kinds of ways, right? Okay. So what would be another interesting number in this story? Or anything else interesting that you found?
Does the report advise that an applicant only conducts the survey online forecast? Right,
that's another really important thing, right? So whenever there is a survey, you want to know, how many people were surveyed, right? So where is the actual, show me where the actual number is, the number of people surveyed.
It's right there. It's in that second paragraph.
Right here. It's right here? Okay, right there. So it polled 3,809. Okay. I'm not an expert in surveys, but generally speaking, when we talk about a survey, what does that mean? All kinds of surveys, right? Who are you going to vote for? Who would you vote for if a federal election was held tomorrow? Who would you vote for if a federal election was held tomorrow and you are between the ages of 18 and 25, right? And lived in Ontario or lived in like those are, there was a poll that was released today or yesterday, shock, that support for the progressive conservatives in Ontario has decreased. No kidding. But why does that? An election's not going to be held anytime soon. So what? Okay. So yeah, the survey. So what does a survey mean? Well, when we're taking a look at a survey, it's a sample size, right? So it's 4,000 is a good sample size. Say 400 is not a good sample size. So what I would want to do is I'd want to go to the site and I'd want to see, okay, what is the sample size? So what you do is you survey people and then you extrapolate that. Okay? So you use you randomly select people who represent all demographics, all age groups, all regions, and then you extrapolate that to the entire population.
How can you tell as a journalist that the survey was conducted ethically or properly?
Well, by actually, going onto the website and finding out a little bit about this organization, right?
So you kind of just trust that they have taken their approaches, assuming that they're funded, but assuming that you looked at the actual organization, found that they're a legitimate organization.
Mhm.
Do you kind of just trust that their surveys that they're reporting are accurate, or do you have to further investigate how the survey was conducted to see whether it followed the right practices, whether they were
That's an excellent question. And that speaks to other voices that you should have in your story. So maybe one of those voices would be an expert who could answer those very questions. Right? Yes, this is a good survey. But you want to go into the website and they would have to describe their methodology, right? So methodology meaning, what was the sample size? What is the margin of error? So with every survey, there's a margin of error. So typically for politically based surveys, the margin of error is, 2 to 3% accurate 19 times out of 20. So it means that if 40% of polled millennials say that they would vote conservative or NDP, that number, and if that's accurate 19 times out of 20, within a degree of 2 or 3%, then that number could be either 43% or 37%, which is huge. A swing of 3% either way is huge, right? So you want to see what the margin of error is. The smaller the sample size, the larger the margin of error, right? But you don't have to be an expert in that. Just know to ask the question, and then find out who can, Carleton has lots of smart people, right, in political science and that who you could quote, right? So that's an excellent question. You always want to challenge numbers. And I think that that's another lesson. Challenge numbers the way you would any fact, any figure, right? Numbers are not infallible. So if someone comes up to you and gives you a tip and you think, it sounds too good to be true. How many of you have been in that situation? Someone gives you a tip and you go, okay, this is, right? So what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to report it? What are you going to do with that information? You're going to validate it. Exactly, right? Or, someone gives you a juicy rumor. Are you going to spread it right away, or are you going to check it out? Yeah, like that, right? We work so hard to validate rumors. Think about it. Think about the checks and balance system that goes into the whole rumor mill. It's amazing, right? Well, that's what you would do for stories, right? So a number is no different than a tip that you would get from anyone else. What is the source? So we checked out this organization. We checked it out. It is a legitimately registered charity. You went to its website. You read its methodology about the sample size. 4,000 is a good sample size, right? But speaking to an expert will, I don't know that inherently, but if you speak to an expert will say, yeah, good sample size. Yeah, it's fine. And then, if the Globe and Mail is reporting on it, they've done their homework, right? If it's the Rebel or the Rabble, two publications on opposite ends of the spectrum, I probably would be a little bit more circumspect, because although the Globe and Mail is an ideologically driven media publication, it's not as much so as those two organizations. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it's just a fact, right? I work for Canada's National Observer. We are a left-wing, climate-based organization. We are ideologically driven. We are leftward leaning. I don't make any apologies for that. But we strive to be fair. That's what I tell my reporters. That's what, we have to be fair. We don't make stuff up. Okay. We have to be credible, because if we're not credible, then people are not going to subscribe to our service. Just not going to happen. And then we don't survive. Okay. So this is a really good example. So what I'm gonna do is, does anybody, Mel, you have a question? Someone have their hand up? Okay, do you have anything to add, Claire, before we take a break?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, nothing to add?
No, not yet, no.
Okay, all right, does anyone have any questions about anything we've talked about before we take a 20-minute break? Yes. Just put your cap so Clara can see you.
I suspect your answer will probably be it depends. But I sometimes sort of like to look at just like new studies that have come out that are peer reviewed. When we're looking at that kind of data, can we assume a higher level of credibility there, or like what would you say about that?
So
Okay.
what Olivia is talking about is an article that would come out in a medical journal, the Canadian Medical Association, and it is peer reviewed. So that is the gold standard. It means that it has been reviewed by peers. Peers would be, fellow scientists or whoever, who have looked at the methodology, like for example, this survey, who looked at the sample size, the error of margin, and they have said, yes, it's fine. And only after that point, then does it become published. There are articles that are published that are not peer reviewed. And that would be because they're trying to, like during the pandemic, for example, during the teeth of the pandemic, there were studies coming out that the authors and the publications did not want to wait for the potentially lengthy process of peer review, which could take months or maybe even years. So the idea is to say, okay, this is not peer reviewed, but we have enough confidence in this that we're going to put it out because the information needs to get out into the public. So peer review, that's a critical phrase. So when would we use a peer reviewed articles? If we were doing something on mental health. And you wanted to find out, for example, as a follow-up to this story, what kinds of studies have been done on student mental health relating to anxiety and inflation and et cetera. Right? So you would want to look for it peer reviewed. So then you would find out, okay, well, what are the medical journals in Canada that would delve into that? Well, the Canadian Medical Association. Okay, are there other, health-related scientific journals that would tackle this subject, either in Canada, the United States, or globally? And then you're off to the races. The nice thing about peer-reviewed studies is that they are published, right? And you can usually get a hold of them pretty quickly. All right, any other questions? All right, why don't we take a break and we'll come back at 20 after. And after the break, we're going to dig into some data. Okay. And I'll just pause the recording. Please remind me to start recording again. I frequently forget, and I have actually done really detailed lesson plans only to realize that I wasn't recording the thing. And then I had to spend an hour redoing everything and posting that as an instructional video. So please remind me to, hey, David, are you recording? Okay. Okay, thank you. There we go. Okay. All right. All right, so please refresh your browser because I've added a couple of things to the syllabus. And I'm sitting right here just because it's easier for me to do this sitting down than standing up. So, okay, I'm going to share my screen. And if we scroll, we can see, so we're week, whoops. So we're week 1, everyone here? Nodding your head, please, everyone here? Thank you. All right, so
I've added two links just below the mental health story, so it's the third and fourth link, right? So the first link is the Bank of Canada. Just announced that it is maintaining interest rates where they are. So we talked about mental health and affordability and whatnot. So what's the connection between this announcement and what we were talking about before the break? Interest rates are staying where they are. What's the connection? Inflation. That's right. So when interest rates are high, how does that affect you folks?
People are incentivized to pay off their debt.
So your student debt, if you're paying off your student debt, all of a sudden the interest goes up, takes you longer. Okay. If unionized workers negotiate or push for higher wages because of inflation, that means prices for commodities go up, which means you pay more for food. There's a huge, okay? And that's one of the reasons why there were 3 premiers who wrote to the governor of the Bank of Canada. This is unprecedented. Wrote to the governor of the Bank of Canada to say, hey, can we keep interest rates the way, where they are? Why is that not cool? That's huge, right? Why is that not a thing that any politician should communicate with the governor of the Bank of Canada, a central bank? It's like church and state, right? So the central bank, the Bank of Canada, sets interest rates. Okay? It is supposed to be apolitical, outside of political influence. What would happen if politicians were able to just phone up the Bank of Canada and say to the governor, Tim Macklin, you want to keep interest rates the way they are? What's the danger of that? There's a couple of obvious ones I can think of. What do you think? Use your conspiratorial mind here, right? I don't overthink this.
Does it set? Oh, wait, sorry. Sorry.
Did you turn your camera on?
I'm just trying to get back into it. There we go.
Yes.
Okay.
Never.
Does it set a precedent for politicians like influencing the Bank of Canada, which, as you said, is supposed to be apolitical?
Yes, it sets a horrible precedent. Nowhere in a developing country, the G20 countries are meeting, Canada, the United States, India, etc., are meeting, holding their annual meeting later this month. All those G20 countries have central banks. There's a separation between politics and central banks. Central banks are there to set interest rates. They are, and they set interest rates based on all kinds of factors, none of them political, right? So that's called monetary policy. Fiscal policy is what governments do, right? Governments might raise your taxes. A government might depend to forgive student loans. A government might decide to spend money to fix up the infrastructure around Carleton, for example. The federal government might send money to the city of Ottawa to pay for the LRT. God knows where that money ended up, okay? Well, all the problems we've had, okay? That is fiscal policy. Those are policies over which governments have direct responsibility, right? Fiscal policy does not intersect with monetary policy for the reasons that Rebecca has articulated, but one does influence the other. So high interest rates, right, have a direct effect on UPU, direct effect. There is no connection to tuition rates for domestic students. Why is that?
What did Doug Ford do to tuition rates? He froze them. So there's no connection there, right? But if they were unfrozen, then your tuition rates would go, their tuition fees would go up too. They have been going up for international students, not domestic students. Okay, so there is a connection. Now, why am I pointing to this? Because as journalists, whether you are interested in sports or fashion or economics or politics or whatever, right? You have to have a rudimentary understanding of how these things work, because they affect the audiences that you are going to be telling stories for. People's abilities to go to a sporting event. Pretty hard to go to a sporting event if you can't afford food. Inflation, okay? Pretty hard to buy new clothes if you know the prices are rising at absurd rates, and you can't afford to feed your family. Okay, you're not going to be buying, right? So it has a huge. So all of a sudden, you've got to be telling your audience why. Why is this happening? And so you have to have an understanding of how these things work and a basic. And if you don't, then follow. You know. So how do you have a basic understanding of this stuff? You follow it. You read. Okay. And you become somewhat adept at following money. Because money makes, whether it's sports, fashion, arts, politics, money is at the root. Okay. All right. So this is the announcement. And this is the Globe and Mail story that just went up a couple of hours ago. Bank of Canada holds key interest rate steady at 5%. Okay. Bank of Canada hit pause on its rate hike campaign, holding its benchmark interest rate steady at 5% in response to growing evidence that the Canadian economy has begun to stall. So why on earth, there have been several interest rates hikes over the last couple of years. Why on earth would a central bank, not only in Canada, but the United States and elsewhere, why would they raise interest rates? Seems crazy. Yeah, yeah. So you want to cool down the economy. The economy was too hot. People were, wow. Here's a radical thought. People were buying too much. People are asking for wages that can allow them to live in cities like Ottawa and Toronto and Vancouver. How radical is that? You know, like I don't pretend to understand it. It seems to me that's obvious. Like you folks, when you graduate from this place, you need to make a living wage. Right? You can't be living on minimum wage, and you don't want to be working 2-3 jobs to make ends meet. Right? That's reasonable. Okay, so naturally you're going to be asking for higher wages. What's the matter with that? Well, the problem is once the economy heats up, then everyone charges more, right? So if a business is okay, let's take Canada's National Observer. So we have reporters, we are unionized. They are part of the union, the guild. They negotiate a wage. If they now they want to play catch up, right? Which is fine. So if they want to pay catch up, that means that it costs my boss more to pay her employees. If it costs her more to pay her employees, then she has to recoup that money somehow. How is she going to do that? Charge more to subscribe, right? So all of a sudden, if you want to subscribe to the Canada's National Observer, it's going to cost you more, right? Multiply that over everything: food, car rentals, maybe tuition. It will be unfrozen. Maybe tuition. Every aspect of your life, it goes up. So the idea is if you keep interest rates high, right, it tamps down economic activity, right? and it lowers inflation. So it gets inflation down to what is the benchmark for inflation? What is the benchmark whereby the Bank of Canada says, okay, we're good. Don't have to raise interest rates anymore. Any idea? Yeah. A little higher. 2%. 2%. So inflation. So, geez, what's inflation and how do we keep track of it? And, well, any ideas as to the institution that would track inflation rates? What is the major statistical institution in Canada? StatCan, you got it. Okay, so let's go back to the syllabus. Okay, and these are just other stories that I've posted for your edification. So let's go down to Statistics Canada. Okay, and let's look at the release schedule. So these are all of the tables, all of the releases that StatCan will be doing over the next few months. Okay, and there's a calendar here. Okay, so let's take a look at the Statistics Canada tables. So Statistics Canada, I would venture to say, and I don't quote me on this, but most, if not all, of the G20 countries that will be meeting this week have agencies the equivalent of Statistics Canada. And StatsCan's job is to what? What does StatCan, what does it do? Statistics Canada. What does that name imply? Yeah, or even simpler. They give us numbers on a regular basis. Every day they give us numbers that people can turn into stories. They can turn into narratives. Right? They give us numbers. And their methodology is a high benchmark, right? If something is coming from StatCan, even StatCan gets stuff wrong and they will correct, like for the next month. But generally speaking, when stuff comes out from StatCan, it's reported on widely because it is the institution that collects statistics based on surveys. So remember the surveys that we talked about before the break? Okay, that's how StatCan gets its information. Is it surveys people in terms of what they're paying. If it wants to track the unemployment rate, it will talk to businesses to get a sense. Okay, so it's based on surveys, a random sample, and then it's extrapolated over the entire population. So it's a pretty important agency, and I can't think of a topic that it doesn't keep statistics on. And so this directory here, these are thousands and thousands. You can so just take a few minutes, and based on your interest, is everyone on this page? Based on your interest, just type in a topic and see if you can come up with a few tables. I'll give you just a few minutes. Bless you. How about if I go first? So I typed in, and I'll just back up what I did here. So I typed in crime in the keyword search. Okay. And I got 243. That's a lot to go through. I don't want to go to 243. So the nice thing is that you've got the ability to filter. So when any data set, what you want to do is to filter down to what you want. Start general, as we talked about at the beginning, you drill down. So I can drill down by geography or frequency, right? So frequency means that you always want data that is as up to date as possible. So in the case of StatCan, so your assignment, you probably want something that's monthly or yearly. You know, data that's released on a yearly basis is usually there's a lag time of a year, which is not bad, right? You can say that, you know, according to, you know, statistics, you know, 2022 statistics from StatCan, the most recent release or something like that, right? So I'm going to say, okay, crime, and then monthly. So all of a sudden I'm down to 2. And then if you want, if I had more than that, then I can sort not by relevance, but I can sort by date to get the most recent one. And then I apply it. And the most recent release is this one here. Monthly average counts of adults in federal and provincial territorial custody during the COVID-19 pandemic. Selected police report crimes calls for services during the COVID-19 pandemic. Could be interesting. Okay. So that's what I, you know, did in just a couple of minutes. Anyone want to share their screen and show us what they were able to find? Okay, you should be able to share your screen. If you can't, I'll give you permission. You know how to do that? So you go to the 3 dots. There you go. Okay. And just let us see who you are so that Claire can see who's talking.
Okay. So I guess what I had originally searched was one second. So I just searched up the keyword was soccer, because I'm a big soccer fan. And it brought up participation in outdoor activities by household income. And I was going through the stats, and what I used to filter was just the it brought up participation in outdoor activities by a certain bunch of factors. One was by income. I think one was by like geographical area. So I went by household income. And what I found interesting as I was going through the numbers, that the higher up, I guess the more that the household income is, the more percentage of people participated in outdoor activities close to their home. So this is the lowest income tab, which is under 20,000. You'll find 59% to 60% from 2019 to 2020 participate in outdoor activities. And if you skyrocket up to 100,000, that number jumps up to 87%. And it's a continuous growth from there. So I thought it was really interesting. I also checked that this was released in April of 2023, despite the period being from 2019 to 2021, because it's a frequency of every 2 years.
The thing with data, that's a good one. The thing with data is that it's typical to have a lag time of about a year, right? So if a data set is released annually, the lag time will be a year to 2 years. If it is released monthly, as is the case with the Consumer Price Index or the Labor Force Survey, the lag time is about a couple of months. Okay, so that's just typical, because think about it, right? They need time to get the, do the survey, tabulate the results, verify everything. That takes time. So that's hence the reason for the lag. But that's a good one. Okay, does anyone else want to share? Go ahead. Yeah. So there should be, if you hover over your square, there's 3 dots. Click on that, you'll get a drop-down menu, and then share your screen. No, or just share your screen, actually. At the bottom? Yeah. The big green button. Not yet. See where the green button is on the screen here? Yeah, just, there you go. And just turn your camera on, please.
Also my microphone. Okay, I'm here. Okay,
There.
yeah, so I don't know, I was talking with my parents yesterday about retirement because my mom's a teacher and it was her first day of school and she's like, damn, I can't wait to retire already. And so it was just like a topic that we were talking about. And so I looked up keyword retirement. And I went and looked up retirement by age, class, and worker. Because I was thinking like, well, if I was gonna retire one day, what would be the difference if I worked with a company versus working freelance? I have no idea if that's actually relevant, but if you look here, there's a pretty, I don't know, it's just a tiny little chart. It's pretty like there's a strong correlation between if you look at like in public sectors, probably working with companies, you're retiring younger, probably because like you have a pension, it's gonna be easier to support, like you'll be supported. Meanwhile, if you're self-employed, you're retiring like 4 or 6 some years later, which is like a significant difference. That's a lot of money in your life. So anyways, that's the little rabbit hole that I went down.
I will point so you see those tiny numbers to the top right of the letter, like in public sector employees and then letter 5.
Yeah.
See in the second column?
Yeah.
Right? See click on that number. Okay, those are footnotes.
Oh.
Right? So the nice thing about stat can tables is that a lot of the numbers are footnoted that give you context. Okay, so pay attention to those numbers if you're using stat can tables, because they give you context for your numbers.
So yeah, there you go, actually. That just private sector employee, that's like
really interesting. So
with the
self-employed, click on self-employed, the number 7 to the top right of self-employed.
incorporated and unincorporated.
Okay. So that means, for example, unincorporated and incorporated. Any idea what that means?
Not particularly.
Have any of you run your own business? Or you might when you're great, you might decide that you want to be a freelance journalist or a freelance editor or a freelance fashion designer or whatever the case may be. So you can either just freelance, go contract to contract, or you can actually become incorporated, which means that you have an incorporation number, you charge GST, et cetera, right? So in addition to, I work for Canada's National Observer, but I charge them through my company. I'm incorporated, Data Generation Consultants. I'm hired by the university, but I'm hired as a contract instructor. Right, so that's 2 different things, right? Contract instructor, unincorporated. Canada's National Observer, I charge them, I collect GST, incorporated. So that would be the difference. Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah.
One more. Yes. You see the little green button at the bottom? Yeah. Oh, okay. There she is. That's okay.
Okay, so
I,
Just turn your camera on, please.
yes.
There we go.
Okay,
Okay.
so I just searched like the filters. I didn't search like a particular word. I just clicked like the filters, and my mom is also a teacher actually, so that's what I was thinking of with the education. And I was looking at like ages of teachers in elementary and secondary school, public, because in Ontario I wanted to see like, yeah, what the ages are, because education in Ontario is kind of like a mess right now with like Doug Ford and Stephen Letchey and all that. So my mom was always telling people like it's a bad time to go into teaching. So I wanted to see like what the number is. And as you can see, Ontario, the youngest age 25 and under is like a very low number compared to some of the other ones. And then as like it gets older, there's more. And it's like harder, like with retiring and stuff, a lot of people would want to retire, but they just can't right now. So yeah, that's what I was looking at.
Okay. And then be sure to click on the footnotes just for
Oh yeah.
for context. And then if you scroll down to the bottom, they will also have related products, so related tables. They might have a little bit more background information about the table you're looking at, right? So always scroll to the bottom for more information. Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. And we are at the 10:50 mark. And so you can now, once I post this, you'll be able to use Where We Go From Here as an instructional video. Okay, you can follow along if you want. Now, do you all have Excel on your systems? You don't. If you don't, you'll need to have that for next class, right? So what you can do is you can either just follow along visually, or you can actually kind of do it. But either method you choose, you're probably gonna have to review this anyway. So that'll be your assignment, is just to review the steps that we've taken, and take about half an hour, 45 minutes. It's not that arduous, okay? But if you just want to watch, then that's fine. Yes. You need it on your computer, but you get it free with your, with your student, bless you, with your student tuition, you get it free. It's a Microsoft product, so you just download it. No, use it's the problem with cloud-based stuff is that everything that you do before it has to be stored on the cloud. So if you're playing around with data, you want it on your laptop, you don't want it in the cloud, right? So yeah, it's your tuition gives you access to Microsoft products. So yeah, just download it and have that ready for the next class. Okay. All right. So because we've been talking about inflation, I'll if I have time, I'll get to the labor force survey, but I want to start with the consumer price index. Okay, which is this, and I'll just pop this in the chat just so that everyone can follow. Okay. The thing that now, what StatCan has started to do is to develop these interactive apps, right? So you can look at this, and this is the consumer price index. What story does that graphic tell, that line graph tell? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
It tells the story of rising prices around like the January 2022 to January 2023.
Absolutely. Yeah. So during the start of the pandemic, it was really low. And then all of a sudden it started to go up and up and up, and it reached its zenith right here. And then it's been going down, and then it's been spiking upward. We don't know why, right? So if you want to know why the Bank of Canada has been using high interest rates to tamp down inflation, you can see right here. Okay. And so this is all items. So this is a number. This is a big number, right? But this is for all items, right? So this doesn't really, I mean, all this tells us is that the price of a lot of stuff that we buy and consume is increasing. But that's not really a story, right? If you're going to be doing a story about stuff that we buy, who's the central character? Someone who buys stuff? What kind of stuff? Right? So if we want to see what all the stuff is, we can go to the actual items and we can see, so the consumer price index is a basket of goods, 8 goods that are subdivided. And so these are them. So food, shelter, household operations, transportation, etc. Okay, so you can see that this is defaulted to all items. Now, what if we wanted to include, oh, I don't know, let's say food. And you can see that food is, these are all subdivided. So food is subdivided into food purchased from stores, right? So if you just wanted to look at food purchased from stores, that's interesting. You could just do that, right? Grocery, who wouldn't read a story about high food prices or groceries? We all buy food, right? That affects probably more people in your demographic than, say, transportation or driving, right? Because you buy food every week. And you've probably noticed that, holy cow, it's really expensive, right? And I was teaching an investigative class at King's College, University of King's College in Halifax last winter. And one of the things we discovered is that Halifax is the most expensive city for people your age to live in for a number of reasons. And it's that what they're making and what they're spending, that there's the biggest gap between what they're making and what they're spending, because a lot of the jobs are service sector jobs that pay minimum wage, right? And yet for housing, they've got among the highest energy costs, right? So the highest food costs of many jurisdictions in the country, Nova Scotia does. And so there's a huge gap, okay? And it turns out that there is a growing number of students, and I suspect that the same thing is happening here, and you may have even done stories about this. Capital Current may have done stories about this, that an increasing number of students are using food banks, okay? This helps tell that story. So that's why you might want to, if you're going to use this, say for your assignment, you might want to filter it for food purchased from stores. Like just food, and then subdivide it to food purchased by stores at stores. Okay, for example. Okay, so let's just take a look at food. And now we can see that, now look at this. So all items, okay, 3.3% food. What story does that tell? Just by looking at the graphic, okay? And that's why this graphic, it's simple, but it tells a story. You get it right away. You get it. You don't have to interpret, right? There's 2 lines. One, and here's the legend. There's food and all items. So what story does this tell? What's the difference between these 2 numbers here? The 3.3% for all items, 7.8 for food. Yes. Okay. So what if we wanted to compare food to another item on here, which is, oh, I don't know, say shelter. So of the shelter, which ones would affect you folks the most? Owned? Any of you own your own home? I never take anything for granted because there could be a student homeowner, although you probably wouldn't want to admit it to your classmates. Okay, so of these, shelter, right? Shelter is subdivided. Which ones would be most appropriate for you folks? Rent, tenants insurance, tenants maintenance, repairs, etc. Which one? Rent, okay? So all of a sudden we can compare rent to food, right? So this is rent, okay? So rent is higher, is still higher, right? But it's lower than food. So you start to get the idea. So the nice thing about the thing that I like about the apps and the reason I start with this is because the apps allow you to play around with the data and to see what the trends are. Eventually you'll download the data set and you'll filter this information in Excel so that you can find a trend, and then you can map this yourself in Data Wrapper. So you can do the same kind of thing in Data Wrapper, right? But this allows you to kind of play around to see, well, what would I filter for when I download this information? So maybe one of the assignments, that we will do next week will just be, I'll just have you log on to this and I'll say, okay, so filter for, let's compare food and rent. So go boom, 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 and okay. All right. So it's kind of really cool. And you can also compare jurisdictions, right? So geography. So this is just for Canada. But what if we wanted to compare Ontario with, say, Quebec? Because we're right on the border, okay, sort of. So all of a sudden you've got, and if you scroll to the far right, you can see the numbers appear in the legend to the left. Okay, so you can see that, okay, food, what do you notice about food compared to Quebec and Ontario? What's the difference between those two numbers? In which jurisdiction is food more expensive? Quebec, 9.4%, food, 7.2%. Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. But which is the bigger number? Quebec. Okay, very simple. It's not a trick question. It's the bigger number. Okay, so this begs a question. Very good. How do you get this number? Like, what is that? Okay, well, I'll explain it, and then we'll download the table, and you can get a better sense. So what that means is that you are comparing. Okay, so you'll see these tabs up here. This is the 12-month change, right? Or you could do the monthly change, right? So what is the change from month to month? And this is abhorrent to look at. So let me just do Canada again. And then I will then deselect. I'll just do it for all items. And you can see, okay? So this is the monthly. So we can see that for the latest month, right, it was 6%. So it was a 6% increase for all items compared to the same period the previous year. Okay. So this is the most recent month, July. Okay, so July, so that means that the price of all items were 3.3% higher than July 2022. So if you take all items, right, they were 3% more expensive for all items compared to the previous year. So that's what that 3% means. So if we take a look at, say, food again, and let's just choose food. Okay, because it's really important to wrap our heads around this. No sense working with data if we don't understand what it tells us. Okay, so if we take a look at food, right? So the price of food in Canada, well, let's choose Ontario, right? Because let's get used to drilling down into data. Okay, so we're going to deselect Canada, and we're going to select Ontario. Here we go. So it means that food Okay, and there are different categories of food at gross rates, or let's just drill down even more because we can, right? So food purchased from stores. So we're just filtering for food purchased from stores. That means that when you went to a store, if you live in Ontario, right? So if you live in Ontario and you went to a store and you bought food, right? It was going to cost you 8.1% more than if you went to the same grocery store at the same time in the previous year. It's going to cost you 8% more. That's huge. Okay. I don't know how much you folks spend a week on groceries, but almost 10% more. Oof. Right? When your wages aren't keeping up, you're working a summer job, you're making minimum wage. So think about it, right? It's costing you almost 10% more to feed yourself on a weekly basis, but your income is stagnant. That's the problem that the economy, that's the problem that the central bank faces, right? But that's how it drills down to stories, right? So you know how I don't talk about these numbers without referring to stories and people. And that's how you should be interpreting. There's always thinking in terms of people. Okay. So this is a really cool app. And this is something that StatCan has started to do to make its data more accessible, which is brilliant, right? And so if I want it to go back to the way it was, I just deselect and then select Canada, and then I'll select all items, and then I go back, right? And so this is the 12% change, and this is the monthly change. So usually when it's referred to, it's cited, it will be cited as the yearly inflation rate or the monthly inflation rate to give people a sense. Right? So if we scroll up here, okay, what data is feeding this? Right? This has got to be drawing data from somewhere. Okay, so where does the data come from? So if we scroll up here, you see this little caret here? If you click on that, these are the tables that it's drawing from. See these tables here? Okay. And so the main table that we'll be using will be the Consumer Price Index monthly, not seasonally adjusted. So if we click on that, now the numbers here are a little different. So why are the numbers different? Like all items 158 point, what the hell is that? Okay, I'll try my best to explain. So the way inflation works is that you see here it says 2002 equals 100. So it means that for all items, they've gone up 158% since 2002. 2002 is the benchmark. So it means that they've gone up 158%, 58%, which is a lot for all items. Okay. So if I want to compare, okay, all items went up a total of 58% in July 2023. And I would compare, that is compared to July 2022. So so for the sake of a comparison, let's just do this. I'm going to choose July 2022, and I'm going to apply that. All right, so for all items, so you can see that July 2023, it was basically all items went up 58% compared to 2002. A year earlier, it was 53%. So the increase was 53% a year earlier. And in July 2023, it was 58%. So 53. So the inflation rate would be the difference between 58 and 53. You just work out the percent difference, right? And so that is the number that you get in that graph, the 6% or whatever. So the difference between, and let's just work it out, right? So, so the difference is, what was the first number? 152, right? And it was 158, 153. We'll round up. So it was, what was it in July 2022? 153. Okay, so we'll round down 153. And okay, so let's just do this. Okay, yeah. And in July 2023, it was 158 point. So round down. Okay. And this is going to be important, right, for your visualizations in terms of, you probably want to round up or down. Well, it depends, right? Because if the difference is slight, it could be a 0.2 or 0.3% difference. So if the differences are that close, you might want to have a decimal place. But if the differences are pretty wide, then you probably want to round up or down. Okay, so we're going to calculate the percent increase, and this is your first data lesson. How do you do a percent increase? Grade 6 math equals. So any calculation you do in Excel, you start with an equal sign. Equals. Okay, so here's the deal. Open bracket. Okay. New number minus old number, close bracket, divided by old number. Okay, so in this case, the new number is your most recent number, which is, in this case, I've just plugged it into this cell reference. So it's A690. It's just, okay, let me make this a lot easier. I'm going to open up a new, I'm going to open up a new worksheet and make this easier. Okay, so we have our year here, our year. And we have inflation. So what was the previous year? July 2022. And the inflation was 153. 153. Okay. And we have now July 2023. Whoops. And inflation was 158. Here we're going to have the percent difference. And this could, what I'm doing here, this could be what you use to visualize in terms of a bar chart. Okay, so it would be equals. Okay, so new number, what is the new number? And let's sort these in, whoops, hang on here. I'm going to sort these dates in descending order. Right? The most recent date first. Okay, so equals, the new number is the most recent date, and it's here. So I'm going to click on the cell reference. I'm not going to type in the number, right? I'm going to click the cell reference. Very important. Now you can type B2, but just click on it. That way you eliminate mistakes. Minus the old number, which is B3, open bracket, divided by the old number, which is B3. So this is your formula right here. This is for your percent increase. And I hit enter. And then I'm going to now format this as a percent with one decimal place. I know a lot of you, most of you are on Macs. I'm on a PC, but it basically works the same. Okay. 3.3%. The difference is 3.3%. So if we go back to our consumer price index app, the difference 3.3%. So that's how they got the 3.3%. So the app gives you the percent difference whereas the table gives you what the actual inflation was. But but you can see that when we download, we can just do the math ourselves. Okay. All right. So we can see that this is the, okay, so this is the table. So I'm just going to refresh this. Just reload this. So when you open the table, you will get default values. Okay, so this is going to, and similar to the, to the app. So your default value for geography is all of Canada. Here, your default value is Canada. But if you click your drop-down menu, you get your provinces. Same thing. Okay, same thing. Now, the reference period, typically for StatCan tables, the reference periods are 5 months. That's your default. Now, you might be asking, well, okay, but weren't we comparing July 2023 to July 2022? How can I do that if I only have 5 months? Well, if we take a look at our dropdown, we can see that we can go back as far as we want. And same thing here. Okay, so how do I do this, right? And so these are all my default values, right? So you remember I talked about the 15, like all of the different items. So this is the default here. So this is food, shelter, and we can see our, food includes non-alcoholic beverages. Okay, shelter, right? So these are important footnotes that you should be reading. Okay. So how do I get all of the provinces, and how do I get a broader time reference? Well, you do that by going to the add and remove data section. So you go to add and remove. Now, you'll see so you see tabs across the top. So for geography, products and product groups, reference period, I can adjust these now. So for the products, okay, so 1 of 30 items is selected. And I have a plus sign. Any idea what this plus sign is? What do you think will happen if I click on this plus sign? I get more plus signs. Okay. So I've got 30 jurisdictions. Do I want to select them all? Sure. Okay, I'll select them all. The general rule of thumb is you select as much data as you can, because once you get it into Excel, then you can filter out what you want. So you can compare jurisdictions, you can compare commodities, whatever, right? So it's always a good idea to select as much as you can. So I'm going to select all items, all 30 geographic units. Okay, so products and product groups. Okay, there are 15 selected. There are the 15 that that I alluded to earlier. Okay. And say if we click on all items, so under all items, there's food, shelter, household, right? The same thing here, right? Same deal here, right? Same thing. So this is the default. And then you've got all items, excluding food and energy. So why would you want to include the category of all items excluding food and energy? Seems kind of stupid, doesn't it? Why do you want to exclude food and energy? After we finish talking about how expensive food is. They are driving factors. They are so volatile, right? They are more volatile than rent and others, that if you want to get a better sense of how the other commodities are doing, the other categories are doing, you exclude food and energy, or just food or just energy, right? Just for comparison purposes. because how many of you drive? Gas prices this summer, crazy. Yeah. Ridiculous. Okay. A long weekend, crazy. Right. 1 minute to the next, inexplicable. So because of that volatility, sometimes for comparisons, you take gasoline out, you take food out. Okay. So this is the default. So for the purposes of the assignment, if you just want to stick with this, that's fine. But if there is another, something else that you want to look at, right? Like fresh fruits and vegetables, or you can select that. So what you might want to do is go through the different categories, right? To see, go through the different categories to see if there are other things that you want to look at, like goods, right? Like, or services, or, digital economy services, or et cetera, et cetera. But what I would suggest is to just stick with the 15, because that'll cover your bases. It'll cover food and shelter. Okay. Okay, so use that as a base. But for food, what I might do is I would probably do what I did in the app. I probably want to take food purchased from stores and add that. So I've got 16 selected now, because I might want to find out what students are paying for. Okay. And I might want to, if I take a look at any of these, like I might want to select maybe one of these subcategories. Or for shelter is fairly a broad topic. I might want to look at rental accommodation. Don't care about owned, right? Unless there is a secret cabal of homeowners, amongst your colleagues who you don't know about, which would be a story in and of itself, I guess. You want shelter to be rented accommodation. Okay. And for transportation, maybe you want public transportation. Again, why? Because I'm guessing that most of you live, if not all of you live off campus. You get here how? Public transportation. Okay. So that's something that you want. And then, so you want to go into these categories and take a look at maybe subcategories that you might want to choose, like personal, like healthcare, healthcare services, or, personal care supplies and equipment, etc. Recreation, so you can spend a bit of time kind of figuring what you want, right? Alcohol, right? Are more people, is alcohol and beer and wine prices going up as well, right? So what I would suggest is, in addition to the 15 pre-selected categories, you might want to go into the submenus and choose some others that you might find interesting. Okay. So I've chosen, say, 18 for now. And so I'll just, that's fine. And I'm going to go to my reference period. And I'm going to go from July 2022 to July 2023. So let's review what I've done. Geography, I've selected all. Products and product groups, the default was 15, and the default was the main categories, but each one of the main categories had sub menus. And I went into each one of those sub menus and I just chose stuff that I might be interested in. Okay. Now you're not locked into this. You can download this and figure, geez, I want more categories. You can go back, select more stuff, and then download it again. You can do it as many times as you want, right? And then my reference period was, I went all the way back to July 2022. But you might want to go back to, July 2019. Why would I want to compare July 2019? July 2019, yeah. Pre-COVID, absolutely. So I might want to go back and see if maybe there's a story to be told there, right? So it's all, as a rule of thumb, it never hurt. You're probably better off choosing too many than too few, because you can always filter out what you don't want. Just like we did on the StatCan table, we kind of filtered and we came up with really small subsets. Okay, so once I've done this, now I apply. So this tells me estimated number of data points selected is 26,460. Data point is a line in the, so if you're looking at your, right? So this would be a data point, right? So this is a line here. That's a data point. Okay. So if I want that, I apply it. Now this is awful, right? Because it's got way too many columns. So I'm going to go to my download options. And this is important. Download options. And then I'm going to choose the fourth option. Very, very, very important. The fourth option, choose this option. This option will allow you to create pivot tables. Okay, so choose your download selected data for database loading. You select that option and you want to see, and I've got a lot of, and make sure that you have folders and subfolders. I cannot stress this enough. You do not want to waste time trying to figure out where the heck you put a data set on your hard drive. Right? How many of you have wasted time doing that? Come on. I'll put my hand up. I forget sometimes, right? And I end up wasting probably about 10, 15 minutes because I can't find the darn thing. Okay? Folders, subfolders. Very important to be organized. All right, so now this has a generic title. Okay, so this number right here is very important, and I'll get to that later. But we don't want this database loading data. That's a generic title. Yes. Oh, yeah, if you want to, it's being recorded. I'm almost finished. Yeah, I'm almost finished. Sorry. Oh, that's right. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're almost there. All right. So this is the table number. All right. And you want to consumer, so just CPI, consumer price index, and then the date. So today is September the 6th, 2023. Okay. And here it is. Whoops. There it is. So I open it up. You will be able to open it up in Excel. Okay. And now, one of the first things that you want to do is you want to apply your filter. The filter. Okay. What does a filter do? Well, we saw that on the website. Filter, if you apply the filter, it turns every column into a drop-down menu. So then you want to click to see that you've downloaded all the data that you selected. So you know what these plus signs mean, right? It means that there's more stuff there. So I've got all of the months for July for 2003, and I've got all the months for 2019. Okay, all my items. I've got all of the 15 items plus the ones that I selected. Okay, and I've got my values here. So I'm going to stop it right there. Okay. So for next week, I'm almost finished. So for next week, what I expect you to do is to be able to do what we've done, is to go to that website, select your items, download. That will be your assignment, essentially. So just watch this, make sure that you understand it, and then we'll pick things up from there. Okay? See you next week. Bye, Claire. See you next week in person.
Sounds good. See you then. Thanks, David.